Hi everyone, this is the video for how to complete this course activity called Adaptations in a Changing Environment. The goal here is that you will design a simulation that shows how change in the environment influences the selection of desired traits in a population. So the basic idea of natural selection is that everybody has changes and variations. Those changes, those mutations, and those variations are going to be inherited from parent to offspring. That's undeniable. Okay, and some of those mutations or variations are going to be better suited for the current environment, and some are not. Then, if the environment changes, new variations, or the same variations that were unfavorable might now be favorable. The same mutations that were unfavorable might now be favorable, and they are inherited. This guides and directs the way that these organisms are going to change in order for them to be the most well adapted to the environment. If it gets colder, they may get more fur, or if it gets warmer, they may lose their fur. For example, polar bears, of course, are unique because they're white. What advantage is that? Okay, and you can imagine that at some point these were bears that were colored probably dark, like most other bears are, but then a mutation occurred one day, and one organism was born colored lighter, maybe not white, but lighter. And was that an advantage? And if so, then it got passed on to the offspring, and the brown ones did not have an advantage, so their traits got passed along less frequently, and the next thing you know, everybody's lighter. And then you do that a few times over thousands of generations, and you go from brown to white. We're going to simulate that. If you remember, I talked about this in the unit, in the tutorial, but consider giraffes. It's not that hard to believe that at one point they were just normal-sized horse-looking animals, but because there's such competition for food on the African savanna, that instead of eating off the ground, they started eating off the trees above them. But then all of a sudden, at a certain layer, this was the height that everybody could reach at. You reached up and ate as much as you could, and everybody had the same height, so everybody could reach to the same height. So again, competition. Everybody, the bottoms of the trees were level, right? It's kind of weird to think about, but the bottoms of if you kind of stood at the right height, you could just look across the whole African plain and see that the bottoms of the trees were the same height. That's because whatever the ancestors of giraffes were, they were eating at the same level, and maybe there were other animals eating there too. So one day, a child is born with a slightly longer neck. This is such a huge advantage, because if he can reach up 1 inch higher than everybody else, the entire African plain, 1 inch higher, provides him with all the food that he needs, or her. And he has tons of food available to him. The more food he has available to him, the greater chance he has at reproducing. And the more he reproduces, the greater the chance that offspring is going to be passed on. Basically, at the end of the day, when all the other males, for example, it could have been females, but at the end of the day, when all the other males were too tired to reproduce because they didn't eat enough, he's walking around going, "Hey, everybody, how you doing?" Because he's got tons of energy. And he may look a little funny, but that doesn't really matter at times. So then, the next thing you know, the next generation of whatever they were, a lot of the babies had longer necks, more of a advantage. Next thing you know, 35 generations later, everybody has longer necks. That happens 15, 20 times over the course of thousands of generations, and you go from a normal shaped horse to one with a huge long neck, because it's such an advantage to be able to reach up into the trees. So this is how we got giraffes. It was just a form of natural selection. Nature selected for a trait that was an advantage, and it appeared, and it probably compounded over time to the point where you get a fairly entertaining looking animal such as a giraffe. Unique, but evolution caused this. Now this is natural selection. This is what happens when nature says over time, here's what's going to happen. Nature is very slow. Humans can also do this by what we call artificial selection, but that's a different part. So in part A, we're going to take a look at two different climates. One is a coniferous forest, one is a tropical rainforest. Now, you have to imagine, why are there, coniferous means pine tree, by the way, so why is there pine trees in this particular area, but a tropical rainforest in this particular area? Now, tropical rainforest plants are entirely different. We've studied those, or you studied those before, so we're not going to really go into that. If you need to know the difference, you're going to have to look it up, but most people know what a pine forest and a tropical rainforest are. But notice the difference here in temperature and rainfall. In a coniferous forest, you know, this is January, February, March, April, May, so January to December. Here's what happens in the coniferous forest. You know, the temperature goes up and then it comes back down. This is in Celsius, but you can just kind of imagine it gets warmer in the summer and then it cools back off. We kind of live in a coniferous forest type environment, right? And look at the rainfall. Okay, not much rain, but rains in the summertime, and then not much rain back in the fall. Now, a tropical rainforest is a little different. Notice the temperature stays the same all year long. Okay, never freezes, and you gotta believe that that's the difference. The freeze line here, by the way, is 0. So how often is it below freezing? Okay, freezes about at least a third, maybe half of the year, at least a third of the year in the coniferous forest. So that's a little bit further north than we have here. But the tropical rainforest never freezes. Also notice the amount of rainfall. Okay, this thing doesn't get much rain here, you know, in millimeters, but it gets a lot more rain in the summer and late and early fall than the coniferous forest. This is why it's called a tropical rainforest, because it gets lots of rain. So the first thing you're going to do is evaluate these two graphs and explain why plants from these two ecosystems have different adaptations. And you can use what I just said, you know, lots of rain, never freezes in the tropical rainforest. Not so much rain, freezes often in the coniferous forest. What does that do? Now, part B is so the next thing is we're going to take a look at 3 different types of leaves that's found in a tropical rainforest. And remember something, one of the biggest killers of trees is a fungus infection on their leaves. Fungus can grow rapidly in moist environments and can seriously kill plants. So there's 3 types. There's the medium tip leaves. These leaves are narrower toward the tips but don't come to a full point. Most of the water drains from the leaves. There's the drip tip leaves, which leaves come to a sharp point leading to a thorough water drainage from the leaves. And then finally there's the wide tip leaves. Water runs onto the leaves and then tends to pool in pockets at the tips. So basically in year 1, a population of rainforest plants has the following distribution. 50% have medium tipped leaves, that's A. 25% have the wide tip leaves, that's B, and 25% have the drip tip leaves. You're going to simulate 3 years of this population. Okay, how will the trait distribution most likely change over time? Now here you're just going to write and tell me what you think is going to happen. Is it going to stay the same? Are we going to have all 3 types still at the same ratio? Do you think some are going to go up, some are going to go down? Tell me year 1, year 5, and year 10 probably what's going to happen. Now you got to think about it. Okay, if fungus kills these trees and fungus grows in moist environments, are all 3 of these traits good for it, bad for it, some good, some bad? Okay, now part C. And this is similar to part B, where it's the same kind of thing. Trait A, B, and C, that's going to be the leaf shape. Okay, here is the current distribution of them. You got reds are A, blues are B, and greens are C. But now you're going to draw me a difference. You're gonna draw for me in here using this, you know, you're gonna draw me how it's gonna change, similar to what you did above. Okay, so you're going to, so each circle represents 125 organisms. You're going to start out with the same ratio you did on the last one, and you're actually going to draw circles with the colors in them to show, may not exactly be this way, alright? But you're going to draw circles with colors in them to come up with a total of 2,500 plants. At 125 organisms, one circle is 125, two circles is 250. So you're going to need 20 total circles, okay? 50% have medium leaves, 25% have wide tip, 25% have drip tip, okay? 20 total circles. You're going to draw that, okay? And make sure you add the key. Now, part C was year 1, so now we're going to simulate what happens in year 5 and year 10. Okay, basically you're going to change the circle to have more or less of A, B, and C, depending on what you think is going to happen in terms of their growth. Okay, so you should have another circle with 20 dots in it, and it'll either have the same of all 3 colors, more of some and less of the others, or whatever you think is going to happen. And you're going to label one year 5, and you're going to label another one year 10. Alright, and here's part E, and you can read the answer, but explain your justification for the changes in trait distributions between year 1 and 10. What do you think could happen by year 15? You can read this answer, and it may help you out totally, but do not copy this answer. So your answer has to be written differently than this one. And that's the end of the simulation. When you get it finished, I will get it put into the grade book, and thanks for your time.